sonnet by Dora that I wrote many upon it. Okay. Late one night when the wind was still, and brought the baby to the windowsill. See a bit of heaven shoot across the sky. One more time that I saw it fly. Came from the east just as bright as a torch, and
afternoon, family and friends of Ayira. And excuse me one moment while I just tell Jeremy up in the balcony to please start the live stream. It's on? Okay. Thanks everybody for being here. This event is being live streamed for family and friends who live far away. Notably her father Michael and his wife Francine, her stepfather Tim Colson and his wife Andrea, Ayira's brother Matt and wife Lynette and family, and brother Jason and wife Deanie and family, and other friends and family in Ontario and in British Columbia. It's nice to see everyone. Thank you for being here. I wanted to play that song to open the celebration today. That was a favorite of mine, Mary Chapin Carpenter singing a Joan Baez song. The things that we are made of. I played that to Softly Love. So there'll be several speakers, and I'm going to introduce each one of them to you. And then the celebration today will conclude with a slideshow that was prepared by Freya and Bridget, with guitar accompaniment by Galen. After the celebration, refreshments will be served in the church hall, which is just out the door and down the hall. And please join us for coffee, tea, sandwiches. If you need to use washrooms at any time, you can ask one of the ushers or one of the women in the church will know how to direct you. Okay, so the first speakers today are going to be Freya and Bridget, who are going to deliver the eulogy for their mom. Come on up, girls.
Hello. So first of all, we'd like to thank everyone for taking the time out of their day to come and celebrate the life of our mother, Deanna DeFreitas. But most of you will know her as Ayira Hart. We want to also acknowledge and thank those of you who couldn't be here today and are watching from home. It goes without saying that she has touched many lives, but each of you here has also impacted her life in one way or another. It's not often that you get to have so many loved ones in one room together, so I think it's important that we take advantage of this opportunity. In honor of our mom, today is a day of joy and gratitude and a time for all of us to share memories together.
As her daughters, we got to see a very special side of her that we are forever grateful for. Our mom really was the best role model, really was the best role model a child could ask for. In so many ways. Like how she loved so fully and deeply and was so passionate about life. It's hard to find the specific words that we're able to capture. I knew this was going to happen. To capture how unique she was and why she was a special parent. But I think the most important thing about how she parented was that we never questioned her love for us.
As kids, even sometimes into high school, she used to let us sleep in her bed for months at a time when we were sad or scared. and we knew there must have been many times she wanted her own space, but let us in anyways. We always look back on those times and feel so grateful for the feeling of comfort and closeness that it brought us to our mom. There was one time, though, I was in bed with her, we were sleeping together, and I kept getting woken up by this noise that I thought was a bear. And so I would wake her up because I was scared, thinking there was a bear outside. And when she would wake up, I wouldn't hear it anymore, it would stop, and she'd be confused and think I was going crazy. So she went back to sleep, and then I would hear it again. And then I would wake her up again, still scared, thinking there was a bear outside. And it was only until the third time she fell back asleep and I heard it that I realized, oh, just mom snoring. Just very loud snore. But anyways, she was the kind of mom that built us up and believed in us and encouraged us to be creative.
Before our mom passed, she told us that she had no regrets and wouldn't have changed a thing in her wild and adventurous life. And that adventurous side is what eventually led her to Barcelona, where she studied abroad for art in her 20s. I remember she spoke highly about this time in her life and how it shaped her, allowing her to become her artsy and expressive self. She would rave about the people she met there and how different they were from high school, often using it as an example to reassure us that it gets better after high school, especially the boys. And for us, her enthusiasm about it all was inspirational.
Her travels didn't end in Barcelona, though. She visited lots of places in the world and loved it so much that it turned into a lifestyle for her. The passion she had for traveling and her free-spirited nature is what brought her and our dad, David, together. After meeting through mutual friends, they went traveling for years throughout Mexico and the US in their camper van, always finding fellow travelers and community everywhere they went. Even when she was 6 months pregnant, our mom wasn't scared to climb a root-covered cliff alongside a waterfall.
They were hippies through and through, whether they like to admit it or not. And if you don't believe us, they got married over a flower, and then they ate it to confirm their marriage. I remember reading the letter she had sent to her mom expressing how crazy it was and how alive she felt. In those same letters, she would talk about how in love she was and how special and impactful the life they were living together was. During their travels, they chose to come to Vancouver to have me, with the plan to eventually go back to Mexico. But they fell for the people and the community there and couldn't part ways.
Something our mom always told us before, that she told us before she passed, was that community is one of the most important things in life, and that it carried her through her hard times by being able to lean on others. These years together as a family were filled with memories of dinner parties, barbecues, birthdays, and lots of camping. One thing we loved about our childhood was that we often had neighbors and travelers from around the world stay with us because it was part of our family to be social. Our parents had created a one-of-a-kind environment for us that influenced our outgoing personalities and strong values. When our parents separated after 14 years together, it was a pivotal moment in all of our lives, but especially our mom, who is now a single mom.
This sparked a shift in her identity. And not only had her relationship status changed, but after a dream where she was given the name Ayira, she decided to change her name as well. This is also when she knew she wanted to become a counselor and went on to pursue that, all while working 3 jobs.
One of the reasons we look up to our mom the most was because of her persistence and dedication to becoming a counselor. It taught us that it's never too late to change careers and still succeed, even if it takes many years and many struggles to get there. We did not, however, expect that our mom would use her counseling methods on us.
From then on, anytime we got angry, our mom would say to us, well, can you tell me, where do you feel that in your body? And as many teenagers, we'd reply, I don't know, Mom. I don't know where I feel it in my body. That's weird. I'm just mad. Or when we'd be scared or anxious, she'd put us in a position to let us shake it out, which literally meant shaking our entire body from head to toe. That's just a couple of the many ways she used her strange counseling methods on us.
Our mom truly believed in the power of counseling, which I think fueled her to never give up until she made it happen. Along with counseling, she also wanted to explore and enhance her spiritual connection within herself through Cebu. This led her to discover a spiritual retreat called Journeys of Transportation, where she met Neil. She was always very careful about the men she introduced to us, and Neil was the first serious boyfriend she brought into our lives after our dad.
And this is probably because the only other time she decided to bring a man, it ended with me bursting through the door yelling, get the out of my house! But at least we were able to laugh about it later. Our mom was lucky enough to have two great loves of her in her lifetime, both very different. Neil became a very big part of our lives, especially after he let us move in with him, which was great because it brought us closer together. Then COVID hit shortly after, and we were ready to pull each other's teeth out. And the two of them had shortly, huh? Oh yeah, sorry. The two of them had connected mostly through their love of counseling and their childish sense of humor and overall just being silly together. Our mom had found a companion who stuck by her side through thick and thin, and had helped her rediscover her playful side. We started to notice this mostly when we were at Hawkins Lake, where Neil had his property, and people would meet for the August long weekend. The first time our mom dragged us there, we were very skeptical, but it quickly became a yearly tradition that we just could not miss. Going to Hawkins is where we felt we got to know Neil the best and really started to love the relationship, seeing how happy and goofy they were together. There was one time, remember, when our mom won the belly flop competition and Neil was yelling, "That's my girlfriend! That's my girlfriend!" She loved it there so much that her one wish before passing was to swim at Hawkins again. And even though she didn't get to, we were able to spread her ashes there, so in a way, it kind of feels like she did. Our mom had many accomplishments in her lifetime, but one of the biggest accomplishments, besides us, was getting her master's degree in counseling. We watched her study nonstop every day, all day, with only a few breaks in between to go for a walk or a bite to eat. Her motivation paid off, though, because she got straight A's, and that is something to make us so proud. And that is something that made us so proud.
Looking back now, the selfish part of me would say that the time she spent studying was time that we could have spent together. But our mom believed everything happens for a reason, and that what will be, que sera, sera. Which is why in her 56 years of life, she never had any regrets.
She lived life to the fullest and was proud of the life that she lived, and we are too. And that's all anyone can ask for. We know that wherever she is now, she is still our mother, loving us, watching over us, caring for us, and guiding us throughout the rest of our lives.
Thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Bridget and Freya. Well, I'd like to like to say a few words about Ayira and my relationship with Ayira. Ayira and I were together for 10 years, and we lived together for the last 4 years of her life. Ayira really was the love of my life, the love I've been waiting for my whole life. She was really kind. She was a kind person, and quite loving and wise as well. Other speakers today will talk about Ayira as a counselor, I'm sure, so I won't go into detail. But she was a very insightful listener, and she gave good counsel on just about everything I brought to her. I really benefited from her understanding of people and her understanding of relationships, of love, of intimacy, and of conflict. I really valued her advice. She had a knowing way about her. Ayira was an emotionally mature woman who held her own power with me. She pushed back when I needed her to, and she pushed back when she needed to. She was very good at managing her relationship with me and was endlessly patient. I wanted to live my life with her, and she wanted to live her life with me. We had that kind of compatibility. Best of all about Ayira, she laughed at my jokes. She was the most playful woman I've ever known. She made me laugh. We laughed about things that made no sense to laugh about, without even knowing why we were laughing. I suppose that is characteristic of lovers. One day, up at my cabin in the Caribou, years ago, she began walking up a path to the upper part of the property, and I began to chase her for no reason. And she began to run for no reason. And we laughed and laughed without knowing why. And I chased her from then on, whenever I could, up the basement stairs, in the backyard, in the front yard, down the hall to the bathroom. We laughed. We were traveling together in Turkey in 2017, visiting Sufi communities with my former Sufi teacher, and we were staying in a lovely hotel in Istanbul. And as you know, the Muslims pray early in the morning, and the whole city is wired with loudspeakers so that everyone can heed the call to worship and come to the mosque. The first call to worship by the muezzin for the day happens just before dawn. And the evening had been warm. We left the windows open. I was still asleep. And the muezzin began his high-pitched nasal chant. Something like, Allahu Akbar. And in my sleep I said to Ayira, there's a muezzin on the windowsill calling us to worship. Ayira was already awake at this point, and she said, without missing a beat, she said, yes, yes, he's on the ledge outside the window. Allahu Akbar. Let him in, I said. Yes, she said, I will let him in. And so she went over to the window and let him in. And the muezzin called out again, and I said, did you let him in? And she said, yes, he's still on the windowsill. He doesn't want to come in. I invited him in. So this back and forth, there's no real punchline to this story. The point is that she was just so playful and, just never missed an opportunity to engage in playfulness and laughter. And living with Ayira, the house was often full of laughter. And great sudden bursts of laughter would come from her office at home when she was talking with friends, colleagues, or clients. This happened all the time. I think she really enjoyed people. And her daughters are the same way, as many of you will know. I felt so lucky to be loved by Ayira. When you're in the middle of a love relationship, you think it's going to go on forever. It's the nature of love. It has that eternal quality. And I think this is why people think that love is a gift from God, God being the eternal one. And I think it's also the nature of humans that we don't understand impermanence. The author of Ecclesiastes in the Bible wrote, "Everything is beautiful in its moment, but the ripening is hidden from your mind, and you cannot comprehend beginnings or endings." Ayira held me beautifully in so many ways. I never wanted to let her go. The curves of her body fit wonderfully into mine. The contours of her heart found a home within me. Her head rested on my heart when we hugged. She loved to be held and kissed. And she always accepted my hand when we walked together. She always accepted my hand when we walked together. No matter what was going on in our world or what was going on between us, she always accepted my hand when we walked together. I miss her terribly. She was one in a million. Now, where's Mary? Mary, would you like to come up? And, Mary is an old friend of Ayira's. They raised their children at the same time in East Vancouver. And Mary has a few reflections she'd like to share.
I've been thinking the first time Neil asked me if I would speak, I was immediate, yes, I am speaking. And I never was able to put anything in writing. I'm speaking from now. The first time I met Ayira, I thought I would just start there. I met her at Kids Beach through a mutual friend, Valerie. Some of you might remember Valerie. And Ayira was there with Dave, and Freya was, how much older are you than Bridge, Freya?
3 years.
3 years, okay, so you were about 3, and Bridge was brand new. And Ayira, who was Deanna at that time, shows up with this frail, what appeared to be ill child, very fragile baby, and this vibrant little toddler. And from that moment, I fell in love with her. I felt something so special about this woman, the way she showed me was this incredible trust in life. There wasn't anything in her that was scared, that was worried, that not for a second. And she was so beautiful. And we became friends. Turned out she became my neighbor shortly after. And I wanted to speak a little bit when you said, Neil, about her humor and how anybody that literally about anything. She will take all of your hands. She will take your hand. And she will meet you wherever you are. And then she'll find some way to make a joke. And next thing you'll be laughing. So we laughed a lot. We cried. And as she was going into her counseling, this is another thing. She was so much more, she had so much more that she brought people than any book could ever teach her. She was truth. She was loud truth. I don't want to repeat anything, but I have a son, my oldest son, who I don't want to make this about me, so I'm going to be quick with this part because I'll cry. He's been struggling with addiction for a long time. And she loved him. And she believed in him too, and she did to the end. And when she was in the hospital for her final time, and I was talking to him, and he called me, and he said, "Mom, I dreamt about Ayira, and she's sitting on the side of her bed, and she's okay, Mom. She told me she's okay." And I went to see her the next day, these are in her last days, and I told her that story by her bed, and she said, "Yeah, that's right, I'm okay." She lived in the material world like the rest of us, but she was more than that. She was more eternal. I hope that resonates, Beth. And to honor her today is about connection. She believed, she only wanted connection. She believed connection was the healing of all of us. And that's all she wanted to do, was connect with everybody. So I've come here today to connect. We're with friends. Thank you. Thank you for listening. Oh, I did want to say one more thing. This is for everyone to hear, but girls, when you showed up today and you both got out of the van, and I just swelled up and just knew how freaking proud she.
Thank you, Mary. Dave Duff was Ayira's first life partner, and he is the father of Freya and Bridget. They made their home in Vancouver, raised their children together within the community there. And Dave would like to speak about Ayira and share some reflections. Please come up, Dave.
Everyone has done such a great job defining her and explaining every aspect of her. I mean, she evoked the high priestess in her soul. I remember when we met, I just got off the bus from travel, and I bumped into her and a mutual friend on the street. And we had breakfast together, and he needed walls built in this place where Deanna was moving into, and so I came to give him a hand. And the magic of Deanna just sort of spellbound. Funny enough, she was with someone at the time she broke up with him. And shortly thereafter, I kissed her into the skylight there. Made a big move. So I really wanted to be with her. And we were almost inseparable from that. We finished building the place and we went, it's Deanna here too. My mom has a cabin up north in Ontario. It's like now winterized, and this is February. And we wanted to get her to the city, my mom's cabin. And we hitchhiked up there, you know, no regrets at all, no worries about anything. I was married, she was never worried about anything. And we stayed there, we had to chop down trees to stay warm and cut a hole in the river water ice to get water. In that time, like about a month, we really got to know each other. It was just us, and we explored every aspect about us in life. And further again, we went canoeing around Ontario, and we were just such a perfect match. We ate the flower. I decided to kind of seal this and, you know, let her know I was serious. And I had a plan to go into Mexico before I met her to buy some land, and she was all down for that too. So it was like, let's do it together. And bought a van, headed to Mexico, and ended up in the States, in Florida, for about a month. And it took us years to get to where we were going. A lot of crazy stuff happened on her 30th birthday, like 1 in the morning. It's like, hey, let's go to the Grand Canyon. Yeah. And the van's overheating, and we blew a tire. We had to put another tire on. She was willing and ready to do anything. You know, this didn't discourage her at all. She had to urinate. It's not a snake. I decided that she didn't have to do it on the snake, she just didn't know it was there. Yeah, we got to the Grand Canyon, and it cost so much money to get up the hill from Tucson to there. We barely had any money left, and the spare tire, we had to change the tire. The spare tire was running on belts. The tread came off, and it's like, we're stranded. How the hell are we going to do? We have no money for gas to get home. And, you know, as usual, it all worked out. They had a tire our size, they plugged it, and we explored the Grand Canyon together, and it was a beautiful birthday. It was her 30th. Yeah, made a lot of friends along the way, and wound up in San Francisco working, and it's like, okay, I think it's time. We should get to Mexico. It's been 2 years. And it was pretty much right after that, she told me I'm pregnant. I'm like, no, yeah. So the plans for Mexico were basically dropped, and I'm like, well, we gotta head back home and get everything together, right? And she goes, no, I don't want to miss Mexico. I'm not gonna miss Mexico because of rain. So we left the van and we jumped on buses, bouncy buses, and she's like getting bigger and bigger all the way. And as she says, climbing up, I'll never forget this moment, deep in the jungles of Mexico, and we're walking a trail and there's a big waterfall, and she's climbing this thing, right? I'm like, what? As she was turned around and looked at me, it was like a very hungry kind of smile, like to see what's at the top and just go. She was always ready to try anything. And so we came back to Vancouver after a few months down there, and being from Toronto, I've been in Vancouver, but decided not to go home. to Toronto to raise Freya in Vancouver because the water's clean, the air's nice, you know. And within no time at all, Deanna had started networking with a lot of the people who are here. And she wanted to have a home birth, and she couldn't. And she was 2 weeks late, so Freya was induced, and Deanna was in labor for 24 hours. And the funny thing about it is, she would go to sleep in between the contractions. She'd get up, howl, and the snoring, right? But yeah, and that day Freya was born. When she came, we were totally new to this. I mean, most people, like your first child, like, what are we gonna do? Like, we don't know anything about raising kids. Like, we're almost destitute. And when Freya came out, she had a really elongated skull, and I thought, oh my God, some kind of bird defect. She looked like Alien. And I just, oh my God, what are we gonna do? Like, how is she gonna coexist in society? Like, we're sitting there, and it's like, holy, it's like, and she eventually came back to home.
Thank God.
Yeah, and again, community around Commercial Drive. She was networking. She was networking with all kinds of benefits that were there for growing children. She was very good at networking things and finding things and getting them, you know, putting them in action. So, I don't know, a couple of years later, we were bound to go to Mexico again. Freya was about 2, 3, coming on 3. And I've been working on the van, we're getting all ready to go. We affectionately named the van Van Go. Seemed appropriate. And we're sitting in the car, we're just coming back from the junkyard to get a steering column. And we're sitting in the car, and she looks at me and she goes, I should tell you I'm pregnant. Like, what? You know? So that kind of put an end to that plan. But again, she still wanted to go. We went down, took Freya down to California, where she met her namesake. I've been told to be alone. Okay. I mean, everything about Deanna can really be seen right there. I mean, everything is in. These 2 beautiful girls, you know, all the anything that anyone needs to get through life and be a good person, you know, she put in. I remember watching her raising the kids and going like, that's a mom. That's what every mom should be. Every mom should put this into the kids. And the world will be a better place. And you have her sense of humor. She was always quick. She could just, off a simple observation, like crack a joke and go right over my head. And then I'm looking at her and she's like going, and my wheels are slowly turning. And oh my God, it's really funny. I still see her. Whenever I do something stupid, I can see her sort of looking at me, you know, like, you stupid man. It's one of her favorite sayings. So I know anyone that she touched, all the people here and the others, they couldn't make it. You know, there's a piece of her in all of us.
Thanks, Dave.
Yeah.
And many of us have heard about the adventures in America and Mexico over the years, and It's nice to hear your version of events. Thank you. Okay, so moving along. Next, I want to introduce to you Estella. Ayira's spiritual life with Subud. She had with Subud. She is a regular participant in Vancouver Subud, and she and I enjoyed Subud retreats. The Bethlehem retreat in Nanaimo was our favorite, and one of her sisters, Estella, is here and will share a few reflections. So please come up, Estella.
It's an honor to be here today with the people who loved Ayira the most. I'm speaking here today on behalf of many of us who knew her and cared about her in Subud, our spiritual community. Some of us, like me, volunteer to help support people spiritually when they ask for assistance, and in that capacity, several others and I interacted with Ayira from the beginning of her journey in Subud through her passage beyond this earthly life. Even from the first day that I met Ayira, when she was inquiring about Subud and considering joining, she impressed me with her astuteness, her curiosity, and a kind of grounded warmth about her. Over the years, we discovered in Ayira a warm-hearted and thoughtful person who seemed to always put the needs of others ahead of her own. For example, when the doctors told her that they found suspicious lumps on their scan, she came to Maimuna and I for support. We had the intention to help her find maybe strength, calm, peace, a pathway forward, or whatever else she needed to help her through that challenging time. But her concern was not for herself. She wanted instead to feel guidance about how she could best support her close friends, her posse, as she called them. She knew that they would be hard hit. When I talked with Rasuna, another volunteer, she said her memories of Ayira were that she was always caring, selfless, and nurturing toward others, that she never had a complaint about others, and instead always showed support. Rasuna saw in Ayira someone who always did her best, even when severely ill. Ayira's approach was loving and peaceful. When Rasuna and I went to Ayira's home to do special ladihan with her, none of us knowing it was the last time, Ayira's attention was again on us, our care, our well-being. Although she was weak and exhausted on many levels, she tried to make us tea before I insisted on making it myself, and asked about our well-being, our lives, and thanked us for making the trip to see her. Well, I didn't know Ayira as well as many of you in this room. I didn't know about her history. I didn't know about the belly flop contest, for example. But there's something else, a special kind of intimacy that happens with those of us who are practicing the ladihan, our spiritual exercise, together. And in this light, I say Ayira was not just a person who we liked a lot and cared about. She was and is our soul sister. In sharing our spiritual practice together, we had the gift of knowing Ayira's soul, her spirit, her eternal nature. I was in Kamloops for a few days when I got the message that she may not have long to live. In fact, I was awoken that night, in the middle of the night, as if my spirit had been jostled awake. And in a kind of half-dream, half-awake state, a ladihan kind of state, I could feel Ayira's passing from this world into the next one. I could feel some of the layers of feelings and experience that go along with that. Awakening in the night, I prayed for her, felt connected to her, and hoped in whatever small way I could support her from that distance and that spiritual intimacy. She did indeed pass that night, I learned in the morning. A month prior to that, when we did Ladihan together for the last time, a spiritual message came, as it sometimes happens. The message was that although cancer can be understood from many different angles, it could be helpful at that point to recognize it as a form of love. This was the message that we received together. It was not a punishment, it was not a test, it was not merely random suffering. The message was that the cancer at that time was a powerful form of love. Maybe this is something we cannot understand with only our thinking minds, but I believe now that it was that love calling her out of this world into the next, a hard journey to make. Like so many things about Ayira, even when it seemed that she was asking for our help, she was also giving back to us. And that feeling that we have now has helped me through the grief of losing her. No mother wants to leave her children or her posse of loved ones. But Ayira's love, I think as we all know, is not gone, is with us now, is through all the grief of the loss of her. I feel her soul still as big and beautiful and very much alive. I have felt the presence of her many times since she passed, and probably in her own way, she still joins our Ladihans. I want to take this moment to be grateful for her, to think of all of the things that she's done for all of us, and to ask that each of us in our own way, through prayer, through memory, whatever it is, think of our gratitude to her. I certainly am grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, Estella. Whenever I get up in the pulpit, it starts to fall apart. It wants to collapse. Jenny Burns was a close friend of Ayira for many years in East Vancouver. Are you here, Jenny? Did I see you? There you are. They raised their kids together, they talked often, they were supportive of one another, had many common interests, knew each other's family very well. They'd seen each other through many changes, through losses, through happinesses. Jenny, would you like to come up and say a few words? Yeah, come on.
Hi, so I am Jenny Burns, and I was Ayira's friend for 25 years. Still am her friend. Thank you all for coming. This is very lovely. I want to do a little exercise though, because I think part of Ayira would think this is just way too serious.
Yeah.
Okay, so how about we all stand up? If you have sandals on or shoes, you can kick them off. You can kick them off. Just if it's convenient. And I don't know, let's do what Freya and Bridget were talking about. Let's do it. What are you feeling right now? Where are you feeling in your body? I'm trying to feel it right here. Kind of right here. Definitely right here. And she wants to go. Woo! There you go. Let it go. Let it go. Let it go. Yeah. All right. Yeah. So I wasn't going to prepare anything because I feel like some people said already, there's so much to say about her. It's so easy. We could just go on and on and on and on and on. Dave, that was the shortest speech you've ever given in your life. Yeah. And yeah, so we are here today with two of the loves of her life. And the third would be Ivan. Inside joke, inside joke. So yeah, it's So when I met Ayira, I was about 20 years old, and I had just moved to Vancouver. And I think she was actually the first person that I met here. I met her on Commercial Drive, and the babies, Cam was just 2 weeks older than Freya, so they were like a perfect park match. And I didn't even know what I was walking to. Like, of all the people I could have met, she brought so much to my life I didn't even know. I remember looking at her date, they were 30, I was 20, I was like, oh my God, they're so old, like, how am I gonna hang out with these guys? But we had this place on Commercial Drive, and I didn't even have furniture at that point. I was like sleeping on the ground of the apartment with the baby, and I'd go over there, and their house was so cozy and so warm, and there was always wine flowing, and we'd be hung over by 4, and the kids always had such a great time, and it was really, for me, just what I needed. I needed to be in that environment of nurturing and love. And Ayira, yeah, back then, I didn't know it at the time, but she was very much a mother figure to me. I wasn't used to having that, like, steadiness and that love just always coming through, and someone always being there for you, like, through thick or thin. And as time went on, it grew into something much different. And she also introduced me to this whole more ethereal world of, like, I remember being down at the beach when we were like 26, and we had wrote our fears on a piece of paper. It was the middle of the night, and we went down there just to do this. And it was really windy, and we burned them. We couldn't get the lighter going, and then we like threw them into the ocean, and then she made us scream. She's like, let's just scream into the wind, and we just like screamed. And this is pre-counselor Ayira. But I think like all that part of her is what made her an amazing counselor. Like, she was just so wide open. And yeah, I would like to give a little shout out to the girls for that amazing eulogy. That eulogy showed me that you guys know your mother. You understand your mother. And not a lot of kids can really say that. Like, and you have, like what your father said, you have embodied all the great, amazing stuff in her, and you will continue to, and you will give it to your children. And you were blessed to have her as a mother, like Captain Obvious, right? And Neil, we all appreciate so much how you stood by her for the last, the long bit at the end. It must have been incredibly tough on you. You brought a lot of security and safety and calmness to her life, and she really needed that, and she really loved you. You were for her. You were for her. It was just you and her. There was something very special there, and she loved you very, very much. She loved you too, Dave. She was crazy about you back in the day. You drove her crazy, but she loved you. There's no denying it. And yeah, so let me just check my notes. Yeah, I think I'm just gonna leave it at that. I feel very blessed that she was my friend, and the word that comes to mind, she was the most earnest and true person that I'll probably ever meet in my life. She was wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jenny. Okay. I'm going to move on with there's another presenter. I just want to pause for a moment and say how supported I feel here today by looking out and seeing the faces of good friends, spiritual colleagues. My son Galen is here, his fiance, Kristen. My brother David from Calgary is here. David is my older brother and the one I looked up to when I was young, the one I idealized. Thank you so much for being here, David. Jeremy, would you play, please, the video of Matt Corliss? Now, this is Matt Corliss.
Greetings, one and all, and
I'll just introduce Matt. He'll introduce himself. He's got lots to say. But he employed Ayira at Northern Counseling and Therapeutic Services. Employed Ayira as a counselor in the North. And they had a really loving and inspired collegial relationship. And Matt prepared a video, sent it along, that he wanted to share today here at this memorial.
Thank you, Neil, for inviting me to the celebration of our dear, dear Ayira, and your kind offer to share a few memories of her time in the North, something I'm very honored to do. And I'll just say from the top, with all my heart, I've known hundreds of therapists, I've worked with hundreds of therapists, and Ayira was right at the very, very top for being so profoundly empathetic, accepting, loving, and as all of you know, all of the words that we can put together to capture someone who was such a true, rare phenomenon. But as you know, these traits were also true to Ayira as a person. And she's one of the most uniquely compassionate, loyal, loving, and wise people I've ever had the honor of knowing, hands down, as all of you know. But to reel this back, my name is Matt Corliss. I'm a counselor, and I lived and worked in Nunavut, a place way, way, way up north in the Arctic for many, many years. And I started a company called Northern Counseling about 15 years ago. And a few years after I started the company, we got our first really big contract to fly counselors up to Yellowknife to support a major event. And within a few days, we had about 18 of counselors on my team flying from all over Canada to support the event, and it was huge. It turned out we needed even more counselors to manage the trauma safely. So I needed to expand our team, but the catch was that we could only use really seasoned, tried and true therapists who could handle such deep trauma. And so I asked our team, my trusted ones, for their recommendations. And here we begin the tale of the intrepid little soul, as I call Ayira, like a Charlie Chaplin-esque character, walking into the frame with profound magic and a magical healer. And that's how I saw Ayira, and I've told her that many times. So Ayira burst onto the scene in Yellowknife through an introduction by my dear friend and fellow counselor, Kate Roach, a masterful therapist herself. And Kate, if you're listening, much love and thanks to you. So I called Ayira, talked briefly on the phone, and with a few minutes I was just simply convinced of her. And so we flew her up, and the rest is history. She landed in Yellowknife, and a way to say it, she hit the ground loving, not running, loving. And immediately she established herself as someone core to our team. I mean, she won over our hearts with her uncanny abilities to walk with all different types of people in extreme trauma and remain steady, steady, steady. Empathetic, genuine, compassionate, so just uniquely wonderful. And for me, instead of sort of observing and evaluating her under my hat as a director and all that sort of stuff, my attention was drawn to her as I became aware that I was in the presence of something like a therapeutic force that was highly unique. Anyways, we got to work at the event. The work was really hard, but it wasn't all trauma and sadness. We had a real light moments as a team, and over time I would seek out Ayira just to hang out, just to lighten the load and share some jokes and some levity. And you know, Ayira, quirky, hilarious. She could jump in on whatever stupid jokes or escape stories I was telling to get a break, and she's just so funny and so quick-witted, and so she was becoming really a natural friend. Anyway, I promise I won't talk too long, but it was during the last few days of the Yellowknife event that I got an emergency call. We have to get a therapist to a tiny community. Something really hard has happened. A community way, way, way off in Nunavut. The problem was no one was able to go. It wasn't the type of contract that people jumped at. This deployment was no joke. Circumstances were extreme, town super remote and very on edge. And I think we needed someone for a month. And 2 days left to go, I asked Ayira if she would consider. Of course she said yes. And 2 days later she flew off on her first solo adventure, which is real courage for not having been in the North whatsoever. I won't go into details on this trip. It was wild indeed, but throughout it all she did a tremendous job. And she ended up having a truly deep impact on that community. She covered everything, and as we used to say, nothing but right. She was just awesome from the start. And that initial ravingly positive feedback that I was to hear so many times started. Anyhow, over the years, Ayira took on a ton of work for my company, our company, and as a therapist myself, our trips often overlapped in Iqaluit, Nunavut, and often with other people on the team as well, so there'd often be a crew of us. We'd all stay at the same hotel, and it would be 100% accurate to say that Ayira had become very sought after and was basically revered as a healer by many. It's no exaggeration. And many was the time I would walk into my hotel room, go downstairs to the lobby to see if I had a client there, and there would be a line of people waiting to see Ayira. That's something I've never experienced before. I've lived and worked in Nunavut for about 20 years, and in the North even longer. So our new little intrepid Charlie Chaplin-esque healer, Ayira, had become some sort of like a therapist equivalent of a rock star. It was crazy. And in Nunavut, the impact that she had on individuals and their families, and through that, the community, nothing short of profound. I was there, I saw it, and I still hear about it. Those times in Nunavut with Ayira, who by this point I called my sister, a dear friend, whether walking around town, buying insanely overpriced groceries, shopping for caribou or seal, trying on ridiculous huge fur hats, and often making like terrible dinners, my fault, back in the hotel with a group of friends, sharing a bottle of wine and just spinning yards. There's some of the sweetest memories of my life. Precious, precious times. I'm so grateful for that. Anyway, to wind this down, I don't know how far in we are minute-wise, but to wind it down, the last time I saw dear Ayira was in Vancouver with my good friend John Vanderbilt, our good friend. We all went for coffee at the end of my block, and Ayira was at this point in full warrior stage, full courage, fighting for health. We sat under a tree together, and we told jokes, and we shared memories, and I still say hi to that tree when I walk by it, remembering that day. And just all of us being together like in the old days. Me, hyper and crazy as always, her riding with it, making me laugh, laughing at me, hurting my feelings, joking. But it was really just such beautiful, normal times for us. And at the end of our visit, I gave her a hug. She got in her little car and drove off. But after she got home, I got a text from her asking if I was okay and if I needed her to help me in any way. And this, in a nutshell, my friends, to me is Ayira. And I know I haven't done justice with this brief talk, but I wanted to cover some of our time together and hit the big points of the phenomena, who she was and who she was in the North. I think of her daily, and in fact, this is very selfish of me, but true. When I'm struggling in my own life, if I'm being fully honest, I bring her to mind and heart for company, for grounding and for loving guidance. She's always with and there for me as she was in life. Sacred. So, in closing, I want to thank you all for this chance to share a few memories. Ayira, I love you. I'm sending love to your family, beautiful daughters who I've heard so much about over the years, her amazing partner Neil, all my friends who might be listening to this who are connected through Ayira, including Karen Tennock, Richard Donison, Kate Roach, too many great people to mention. And to just all of you here remembering and celebrating such a unique, incredible, rarest of the rare angels. And finally, in Ayira's own words, onwards in love and peace. Thank you all.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks so much for those memories and those reflections. Ayira's career was so important to her. She loved being a counselor. She loved working in the North. Thank you, Matt. A few friends of, by the way, it's warm in this church today. Feel free to peel a layer off like I have if it gets too warm. A few friends, old friends of Ayira from her childhood got in touch with me and wanted me to say a few words. Now, Jeremy in the balcony, I don't know if you located Andre Boulet.
I believe so.
Before you put that on, her childhood friend from elementary school years wrote to me, and Akiko Koshiba, and she just had a few things she wanted me to say here today for her. She says, Ayira and her, she would have known her as Deanna. Deanna and I met in grade 3 and remained cherished friends. She had the great pleasure of meeting Freya and Bridget last summer. In both of her beautiful daughters, I see Ayira in their voices, their mannerisms, and their faces. I'm thankful, she said, that I had Ayira as a friend, and smile when I remember the love and laughter she gave to me. I miss her terribly, but I am comforted that she has found peace. And Andre Boulet, one of Ayira's closest friends through high school, made an audio recording, and Jeremy, I'll invite you to play that if you've got it queued up.
I'm Andre Belan. Back in 1983, I became good friends with Deanna de Freitas, whom many of you in recent years know as Ayira Hart. We remained friends thereafter. After university, we were physically apart, but stayed in frequent contact via letter writing. Back in the early 90s, we didn't have email or text messaging, so we continued our friendship via good old handwritten letters. Let me briefly give you an idea of some things she communicated back to me in 1992 when she was 24 years old, going on 25. February 10, 1992, I get a letter from Deanna. She says she's living in Barcelona, Spain with a boyfriend. She has barely enough money to buy postage stamps to send me a letter. She writes that she is frustrated to tears by not being able to speak Spanish. However, other things are welling up in her mind. Quote, I am starting to believe that I actually learned something in university because now it is all coming back to me. Finally, I am in a position to find out if I like doing art for a life and if I'm good enough and if I have the discipline. I feel good about what I'm doing. My skills as a draftsperson are very competent, but after that, where does one go? So far, I've only concerned myself with practice, but soon I'll slip into meaningful expression. The main thing is being clear with what I want to express. That is something I struggle with, unquote. Deanna goes on in that letter to write me 2 semi-psychedelic poems, and instead of merely taking photographs of her apartment and the area around there, she pencil sketches on oversized paper what her small apartment space looks like and what the window views are of Barcelona, which include old churches, a castle, a palace, a carnival, and all kinds of other things she can see from out of her window. Dated July 1992, Deanna wrote me a letter describing the atmosphere of the city of Barcelona as the Olympic Games were approaching. The people in Barcelona are expressing optimism that Spain has finally shook off years of dictatorship and that they're becoming modern, and so they're very proud and they're partying late into the night, and Deanna is too. She tells me that her section of Barcelona is closed off to traffic, so she enjoys walking about the streets of Barcelona, which otherwise would have been choked with heavy and noisy car traffic. In contrast to that outward-looking mail from that time, on August 13, 1992, she writes me a long letter that's really intensely introspective. Mostly, she talks about the relationship with her boyfriend faltering, and then resetting to some degree with hope. She was self-critical in the letter, saying, among other things, that she was too impatient with developments in life, and she was too dependent on other people entertaining her and making her happy. On October 26, 1992, she shelved that introspection and was instead looking on the bright side of many things. She expressed greater certainty that she really had to leave the relationship with her boyfriend and return to Canada. She was thinking of a new stretch of university studies. Though she was mulling over that, she was very happy about some things in the immediate situations. She says, quote, "The last few weeks I managed to have fun. I was working every day as an art model, going to my studio space to plot out my future artistic plans, and I was going to the Olympic pool where I worked my body. I am currently an exercise freak, spending 3 hours every day pumping weights, swimming lengths, then relaxing afterwards in the whirlpool and sauna," unquote. And at the start of the letter, she was very generous to me. She said, quote, "Hey friend, how are you? You seemed a little down in your last letter, and I'm thinking that it's probably because you lost a special friend, someone you loved. I know that it hurts, and you've allowed yourself to feel sad. That's okay. You can feel that. You can even feel deviant. You can even feel angry at times. Don't worry, it's okay. I love you, and don't be sad. Give yourself a big hug from me. When I get home, we're going to be locked in a hug for what will seem an eternity," unquote. So you can imagine when I reread that so many years later after Deanna passing away, those words really resonate in a whole new way with me, you can imagine. So there you have it. There's a sampling of Deanna's words and thoughts when she was 25 years old in 1992. She was in what turned out to be the middle of her life. She was growing, she was challenging herself, she was looking forward to the life ahead of her. And that life ahead included all of you who are listening to this. So thanks for listening to me. I hope that I've given you some interesting insights into Deanna.
Thank you, Andre. Andre was, as I said, was a really good friend of Ayira's through high school years and beyond. And Andre married a lovely woman from the Philippines, and I think they have 3 children now. Yeah, 3. And I think one of their children carries Deanna's name. Yeah, they were close friends. Okay. So just a couple of more items here in this event. We're going to, Bridget and Frey have prepared a slideshow with some photos of Deanna Ayira throughout her life, and we're going to get to that in a moment. Galen Hustis is going to play guitar for that, but before we do that, Mahmoud Nesman is going to say a few words about Ayira. Ayira knew Mahmoud as a teacher at the VCCT, I think it's called, Vancouver Community. I can never remember the right name, but you'll know it. You'll remember it. Ayira delighted in the work she did with Mahmoud at Journeys of Transformation, where there were rituals and enactments. It was a regular feature of her personal growth work. Mahmoud, would you come up, please? Say a few words?
Okay, I finally have a chance to look out at you. And, wow. I was going to speak for probably about 5 minutes, but now I think I'll go at least 45 minutes. You understand, don't you? As I'm sitting here listening to all of you, I really get, maybe for the first time, how wonderful it is for someone to have their life celebrated. And I hope that all of you have that opportunity. There is a book I read once, it's called Everyone's Life is Worth a Novel. And I feel like I'm reading a novel here today. It's strange how, we cross paths with people. How does that happen? And I met Ayira first when I was an instructor at a college where we built pulpits that didn't fall apart. A counseling college, and Ayira was doing a diploma in professional counseling. And I think I only taught her one course out of maybe 16 that she was doing. And in that course that I was teaching, she stood out right away. And how did she stand out? Well, she was challenging me right from the beginning. Just because I was the instructor, she wasn't going to swallow everything that I presented. And there were a couple of things she didn't quite understand, didn't quite get. And she persisted with me, wouldn't let me off the hook until she understood what I was getting at. And one of the things I was getting at was everyone was talking about how important feelings are, and I basically said, well, feelings actually point to something equally as important, which are our needs. Our needs really are the basis of what basically drive us in this life. So Ayira graduated and then called me a couple of years later and asked to come and see me. Came to see me, and she had two things of concern. One was she hadn't had a job yet, and she was losing hope about whether she would ever be able to work in this field of counseling. She felt she'd done everything she could. She'd studied, she'd done her own personal therapy, and still nothing. The other thing was she'd heard about my workshops, Journeys of Transformation, and wanted to hear more about them, and I told her about them. The next thing I knew, she was attending one of the workshops, and at that workshop, she met another Charlie Chaplin-esque character in the workshop, and his name was Neil Eustace. So they met in the workshop. They didn't exactly fall madly in love at first sight. In fact, I don't think they were that impressed with one another to begin with. And so she continued in those workshops, and she really, really took advantage of those workshops. Those workshops were a small number of people working very, 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 very deeply. That's the opportunity to do that. Sometimes for an hour, sometimes for 2 hours, sometimes for 3 hours, even 4 hours, one person peeling away the layers to get to their fears, their pain, and their souls. And she was a regular at those workshops. She met with me again, maybe after another year and a half or so, and still no work. What can she do? How can I help her? Must be something I can do to help her open this door. And I basically just listened, expressed to her how much empathy I had for her situation. I really wish I could help her, but there was nothing really I could see I could do. And then Neil and Ayira began to get very close and be partners with one another. And then Ayira came to one workshop, and in that workshop, she went into a process that shook everyone who was there, shook everyone to their core. It's like, as she said, I'm going to surrender everything I can. I'm leaving nothing on the table. I'm turning over every possible stone there is to be turned. I'm going for it full on. And she did. And it was a long, long process. But after that, at the end of that process, I had the sense that she had opened a door. She'd opened a door of possibilities that hadn't been available to her up to that point. You just had that strong sense of, oh my God, a door has opened for her. And she had the sense that something totally unique had happened. I'm not saying this is what stimulated what happened next, but not too long after, she had a job, counseling job up north. And after she had done her first stint, she called me, asked to meet with me, and talked about her experience. And described some of the challenges she was facing. The violence, the trauma, the family rupturing. This is incredible. And she loved every minute of it, working with these people. I asked her, what do you do? What kind of approach do you use? You have your counseling diploma and you study different models of counseling. She said, well, there's three things that work for me. One is my own personal therapy I've done, which has really helped me to really explore my own issues fully. Secondly, the workshops. Your workshops. What I learned from those workshops was that it's possible with compassion and patience and trust to help facilitate an organic process of unfolding for a human being. And that's what I was doing up there. I was patient, I was lovingly accepting everything that was brought to me. I was listening, and I was listening deeply. And also, she said something else was happening. And I said, what's that? Things started coming to me spontaneously. Things to say started coming to me. I hadn't planned this. I hadn't studied this. I felt I was being guided. I was being able to touch people where they needed to be touched. And so that really, I was so grateful, and if my work had a little, even a little bit of, was a little bit of a factor in helping her, then I felt very privileged, very fortunate to be able to do that. After she worked up off and on for a while, she called me again and said, can we talk? And what we would do is we would walk and talk. And she said, I have a conflict. And I said, what is it? She says, well, Matt wants me to shift my work or expand my work or add to my work. And I don't know if I can do that. I said, what's happening? She said, well, a lot of the First Nations people who are paraprofessional counselors up there, there have been a number of them who committed suicide. We have a real desperate problem up there. And so Matt has asked me, would I be willing to do counseling with the staff, not just with the citizens of the North, but with the professionals who are working with. I would love to help, but I love what I'm doing. So we had a long walk and talk, and I just said, well, is there any way you can do both? Find a way you can do both. And just reflect on that. See if there's a way that you can manage that. I had a hunch maybe there's a way, and she did find a way. She was able to give up something that she had been doing, but not the heart of what she was doing. So this work that she was doing, I'm really so pleased to hear Matt really describe the impact that she had. Wow. Also, Ayira came to me and asked about, she'd heard about my spiritual practice, my spiritual path, and said that she was searching for a path that would really help her have an experience of the divine. And knowing Ayira, she didn't want an intellectual experience. She had to have a deep felt sense experience. And asked me about this, and I basically told her a little bit, and then she followed through on that. She wasn't in the same group I was in. And then came into Cebu. And almost right from the beginning, she had an experience of a deeper connection within herself and a connection with her own, her own sense of the divine, her own sense of God. And Neil came into Cebu not too long after that. And Ayira was the major influence. He could see, he was experiencing the impact this was having on her life. I'll finish with two things that I recall. The last two things that I shared with Ayira. Which should I share first? Maybe I'll share this one. So, out of my work, a community grew. A community of people who had done my workshops. I didn't initiate it, but people who did these workshops wanted to have more contact with each other, wanted to be more involved in each other's lives, mutually support each other, share. And so that grew, and it was limited how many workshops I could do in a year because I was busy with other things. So a group of these people in this community started to create similar workshops with my blessing, total blessing. And these were leaderless workshops, or I call them all leader workshops. And these workshops seemed to have the same quality of experience that the workshops I led had. So it was like, seemed to be successful. I retired from workshops just after the year that I turned 80, which was when 2022, and felt complete. I had sort of completed my mission, you might say. And one of the members of the community had an unbelievably traumatic experience. Terrible, terrible, terrible experience. And really wanted to have a small workshop to support her. And she said she needed to feel really safe. She had to feel totally safe with this group. And so, and I was invited to attend. But as I said, I don't facilitate these workshops anymore. So if I attend, I'll have to attend as one of the leaders, or non-leaders, which was a big shift for me, but I felt it was right. Anyway, Ayira and Neil were both invited to be part of the group to support this woman. Ayira showed up at that workshop so fragile, looking so fragile, no energy, flatlined, almost completely. But she showed up, sitting there. And this was also, COVID was still around. Ayira was sitting there, she didn't have a mask on. She'd been really careful about this. When I asked her about this, she said, I feel protected. I feel like I'm being protected today. Okay, well, all right. This woman's process basically began the first day we were there. And partway into this woman's process, Ayira and I were both moved to kind of step into the foreground. And the work's very deep. This woman is on a mat and she's deep, just nothing is being held back. All of her trauma is coming forth, full on. And the few of us that are there are supporting this woman. Ayira and I are right with her physically on the mat. And Ayira suddenly comes to life. Unbelievable. She is the magic healer. She's like a ballerina. Everything she touches opens like a flower. She's right beside this woman. They're breathing in unison. They're breathing into each other. And I'm sitting thinking, oh my God, Ayira. But I just have to trust. She truly was that magical healer. And it was the first time her and I had a chance to work together. To work closely together, supporting something like that. And this woman experienced, pretty much a complete healing in this process. I met with her a couple of days later. She was still in awe of Ayira. just even talking about Ayira, she burst into tears. She had so much gratitude and love for Ayira and was in awe. How could she do that? Ayira felt she was being given something. She was being given a grace. She was being given an energy, a grace that basically overcame any of her disabilities. That wasn't too long before Ayira passed on. And the last thing I'll share was Ayira called me maybe 2 months before she passed on. Said, could we walk and talk? And I said, where? She said, well, I'll come out to you. Let's walk and talk where we usually do, Fort Langley. I said, yeah, but are you able? She said, oh, yeah. And I'm going to drive out. She drove out. We met. My God, she was so thin, so tiny, so thin. She was wearing kind of sweatpants that barely hung on. I said, are those your sweatpants? She said, no, they're my daughter's. And we talked and we walked. We talked and then we'd sit down because she couldn't walk, she would rest. And then she said, let's keep going. And we'd walk. I'd say, let's sit down. She'd say, let's walk. And that was 2 hours. And in those 2 hours, she told me, I don't want to die. I'm doing everything I can to stay alive, but I can also accept that possibility. And she was at peace with that. And it truly was peace. Just being with her, being close to her I had a sense of her peace, how deep it was. And then she said to me, I want to let you know that all of my dreams have come true. Dreams I've had, some of which I have very little hope of them actualizing for me, have come true. And she shared those. One, I met a man I love, and a man who has stayed with me through my illness and loved me. I didn't think I would ever find that. I'm doing the work that I love, that I was born to do. I began to doubt, and you know that, she said, I began to doubt whether that would ever come open for me. It has, and I've been able to work with people who really need this kind of work, who really benefit from this kind of work. I'm given total freedom. I'm given total freedom to work in the way I'm guided to work. No one is telling me what to do. I can do it my way. I'm free. She said, I have a therapeutic community that support me, that I only dreamed about. I have a spiritual path where I finally can say I have a sense of the closeness of God and a connection. And I have a spiritual community that support me as well. And she paused, and then she said, there's still more. She said, I've healed the wounds that I had with my father. Not just healed, but there's so much love and mutual support and understanding between us now. I wonder if that would ever happen. And then she said, finally, and I've witnessed my girls growing up into capable, beautiful, compassionate young women. And said, and then a minor thing that I have a dream, but it's not quite in the same category as those, is I've completed my master's degree. And I've proven to myself that I could do that. And so, all of those qualities that you've shared about Ayira, I recognize them. And you've expressed them, I think, so much more fully than I could. All I know is that she came into my life. She nurtured my life. And she continues to nurture my life. Thank you.
Please join us after the slideshow in the church hall, just down the hall, for sandwiches, coffee, tea, treats, fruit, etc. So, could we do the slideshow now? Galen, had you wanted to say a few words before you? Okay, so Galen, come on up, get your guitar ready, and Jeremy, I think Galen has a few words to say, and then he'll tune up his guitar, and then you can start the slideshow, please. Okay.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Galen. I wrote a song for Ayira to accompany this slideshow. I don't really have much to say that hasn't really been said already, but I'll say that Ayira was a friend, she was family, and as I got to know her over the last 10 years or so, she became a guide. Anytime I would talk with Ayira, any conversation, I would leave the conversation feeling better about things, because that was her intention. And I think that's a great thing. So she was a good woman, and we will always remember her.
So I can fly far from this world. I fly so high when I die and leave me alone. And when I die, let there be a hole, this warm dry that I can call big enough to share.